Okay, everyone, if everyone can grab their seats, please, and we'll start General Committee. Hey, guys. Okay, so Mr. Clerk, the time is 7:01 p.m. on Tuesday, December 11th. I'd like to call this General Committee meeting to order. But before we begin, we'd like to remember our former colleague, Deputy Mayor John Abel, with a moment of silence, please. Thank you. May I please have a motion to approve the agenda as amended, including the additional items that have been circulated. Mayor Marakis, and seconded by Councillor Gardner. Any questions or comments on the agenda? Okay, no questions or comments?
On what agenda?
Our today's agenda. Yeah. Okay, if there is not any, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Please say so now. Okay. So we'll move on to presentations, and we have no presentations this evening, but we have 3 delegations this evening. Two delegations. We'll start with Mr. Paul Reid regarding item R2, noise exemption request, 440 William Graham Drive. Mr. Paul Reid, if you could state your name and be reminded that you have 5 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Paul Reid. I'm a resident of William Graham Drive, and I'm here today to really twofold. Number one, to oppose on behalf of my neighbors and the residents that live in my proximity, to oppose a noise exemption request that's on the agenda for tonight, as well as ask that the current noise bylaw regulations be enforced moving forward. Noise bylaw restrictions prohibiting noise construction prior to 7 a.m. and after 7 p.m. Each night. The majority of the residents impacted that reside on the north sides of William Graham Drive, Leslie to the east, Warren McBride to the west. In addition, in my polling, if you will, there has been concerns expressed from our neighbors living at the condos at 555 William Graham Drive, as well as the residents in the senior community, Meadow Senior residents at 400 William Graham Drive. Residents living on adjacent streets, Radio Drive, Town Lane, Derby Avenue, Caprile Avenue, have also been impacted by the noise and ancillary construction activity at the 440 William Graham Drive site. Our neighborhood actually shares some very similar demographics to others we see in our town. We have small families with small children, we have commuters, we have telecommuters like myself, business owners, semi-retired, retired folks. Obviously with the community at the Meadow Senior Residence is approximately 100 retired folks. All of us have moved into this area with the understanding that when you move into a community with new development, that there will be sacrifices to be made. There will be construction noise. There will be additional commercial traffic. There will be constant road work, the dirt, the mud, the dust, all of that stuff that goes along with it. But the concerning thing that for us at the activity at the 4-4 William Graham construction site moves well past those inconveniences in living in a new development. It's the noise. It's the constant noise. It's the seemingly endless noise. And our families are stressed. Our general routines are disrupted. If the exemption is passed, things undoubtedly will only get worse. To put this into context, there has been constant and persistent construction noise over the last 6 months that completely disregard the current bylaw limiting construction noise from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Over the last several months, construction-related noise has begun as early as 3:30 a.m. and on occasions continued well past 1 a.m. Just this week, on Monday, December 10th, I myself was awakened at 4:10 a.m., today at 6:06 a.m. due to the noise emanating from the construction site. Our fear, in the event that this exemption is granted, is the noise will get worse and that will conceivably now extend around the clock. Parents, myself included, have difficulty getting their children to bed at any given night, but with noise emanating from a construction site, that makes things even difficult. To compound that issue, small children, which I have, are roused from their sleep at the shrill noise of reverse warning signals from this construction site. I'm sure you all know what those means. If you've ever been in a Home Depot, you know what that shrill noise is. In the case of the condos at 555 William Graham, almost daily there is a convoy of diesel trucks idly noisily outside the main construction site before 7 a.m. For those leaving on the early on the go train, it is almost impossible to get a sound night's sleep as the noise continues past. One of my neighbors has her daily alarm clock set for 6 a.m. and first she should take the GO train, but most mornings she is wakened well before the alarm goes off as the delivery trucks race down the street to deliver construction supplies. The comments I've heard from the residents at the Meadows retirement home is that the high-intensity floodlights are causing anxiety and inhibit their sleep patterns. One of my neighbors described it as akin to living in a war zone. The residents in this area are not anti-expansion, they're not anti-develop. We have no ill will toward the construction company, the subcontractors, the contractors, the workers on the site. In fact, we see this development in this area as a true benefit to the future of our neighborhood. Having said that, I hope that Council will help us to maintain the quality of life while this development continues and is completed over the coming months. I have 5 more seconds if I can just... One of the Mayor's key messages through his campaign, and one of the ones he reiterated through the inaugural address, is that improving livability of the community is a key part of our community building. Our neighborhoods are what we call home. Mayor, councillors, William Graham Drive is where we call home. In closing, the residents, homeowners, and neighbors of William Graham Drive and adjacent streets respectfully ask Council to reject the noise exemption and enforce the current noise bylaws going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reid. May I have a motion to receive and refer the comments of the delegate, please? Hold on. Okay. Motion first by Councillor Thompson and Councillor Gardner. Any questions or comments for the delegate? Please stay up and you'll probably have some questions for you.
Sorry, I thought I got the hook after 5 minutes.
Sorry, it looks like if you go by the order of the honor, we have Councillor Humphreys.
Hi there. Thank you for presenting this evening. So what time does, is this a daily thing and on weekends as well?
Weekends, not so much, but I would say daily. The only thing that actually, I guess, skews that would be weather conditions. If it's a snowy, cold day, construction doesn't start on time, but it is constant and it's persistent, to say the least.
No, I understand. I live in an area where it's not developed on this side, but it is on my other side, and I hear it. It seems like you hear it all day and all night as well. So I understand how you're feeling, and but it's pretty constant, and it goes on till evening, and sometimes you hear it before 6 a.m., which our current bylaws is 7
Well
7?
before. So like I've as early as 3:30 a.m.,
Okay.
as late as 1 o'clock a.m. I know, from what I understand through talking to your bylaw officers, there is an exemption by the fact that they've put this motion forward to do some construction, or sorry, some lace concrete. From what I understand in talking to some other residents and the construction company themselves, I guess they buff the concrete after hours, if you will. But buffing of the concrete, it actually is probably the least noisy of anything that goes on there.
Right.
The reverse lights, or the reverse warning lights, is a big one. You know, that's once again, it's distressing. It's you know, I actually feel really bad for the residents living in that Meadowlands site. Unfortunately, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the First Service Corporation, who's the property manager there. I think their concerns are being buffered by the property manager, who has a vested interest in having that site built. So, but that's just my opinion. But
That's great. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Councillor Gardner.
Thank you for coming, Mr. Reid. It's a not unusual problem, buildings starting before it should or going later. This is a special condition, and I agree with you that it's going to be very disruptive to the residents. So when we bring the item forward, I'm going to speak to that.
Excellent. As I said, I'm not a number one. I'm not a big complainer. I actually, you used to live downtown, where Queen Street traffic and streetcars were one of those things that you just dealt with. I'm not one of the, but when I see my kids and I see my neighbors' kids being disrupted by construction noise at 4:30 in the morning, people, getting up before their alarm at 4:30 in the morning, we get it. We get it. Think that this is part of living in a growing community, but it's also a quality of life issue. And I don't want to disrupt this construction. I fully support the workers that are working there, but it's getting to the point where we're stressed, and it's becoming a quality of life issue.
Thank you. And this is actually two issues. One is noise bylaws, which we have, and we hopefully will enforce better. And then this is the second issue for an exemption.
Thank you. Councillor Gallo.
Thank you, Mr. Reid, for coming. Have you contacted bylaw about
Several times.
And was there any change, or, I mean, what we're going to be dealing with is something somewhat different, but I'm concerned about your issues that they're starting before and working
I
well
have
past.
contacted the bylaw office at least 20 times and got several emails back, from some of them positive, some of them we're doing our best, some of them we're working on it, some of them they've applied for this exemption, so there's nothing we can do. Some, in all due respect, some of the folks I've interacted with have been very helpful. Some of them have been very, I guess, obtuse or nebulous with respect to how this process works. I was actually quite surprised by the fact that what really shocked me is by putting in the request, as I understand it, that this is going to be put in front of council, that it's carte blanche until this gets approved. That's the one thing that really kind of irked me, was that in my interaction with the bylaw officers was that because Lisgar Construction had put forward a motion or something in front of council to amend or to change or have an exemption of the bylaw, was that until it got in front of council, that was the way it went. So if it's 5:30 in the morning or 1 o'clock at night, it's all good until it goes in front of council.
I may be incorrect, but we can clarify later, but I don't think that's the case unless council
That's what
approves
was
the
conveyed
bylaw.
to me by the
Like the
bylaw
exemption, the old one would be in place, but
That was the exemption. That was what was complied to me by the bylaw officers, and I have the emails to back that up.
thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Just so I'm clear, I certainly understand the concerns around the early morning and late in the evening construction. If council maintains status quo and doesn't give the noise exemption, they're currently allowed to construct from 7 to 7 or try and be in reasonable hours. Are you accepting of that?
In terms of just
Like
enforcing
currently under
the
the current bylaw, they can construct from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Oh, I'm
Well,
all
it's not
for that.
ideal.
We're all for that.
Okay.
Right. We once again, as I said in my statement, we bought into this community knowing that there's going to be dust and noise and traffic, and there's going to be dump trucks in front of our house. But when you have a diesel tractor trailer sitting in front of your house at 4:30 in the morning, idling while your kids are trying to sleep,
No,
that's
agree.
not acceptable.
No, I agree
7 to
100%.
7, I'm all for. Even 7 to 10, whatever. Once again, I'm not anti-worker, I'm not anti-development, but let's just have some reasonability when it comes to this kind of noise.
And I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your thoughts. I know exactly how you feel. I had bought my first home here in Aurora, and I had a lot of construction for 2 years, so I completely get how you feel and the noise and such, so I can resonate. So the question I had for you, you had mentioned the backing up of the vehicles was probably the most, I guess, annoying or disruptive pollution in your neighborhood, but yet the buffing of the concrete was the least noisy. Was that correct?
Well, yeah, I guess when you think about things that disrupt you, that sort of constant hum is a little bit of a, okay, I can deal with that, but it's, when it's 4:30 in the morning, you hear this beep, beep, beep at 4:30 in the morning, that wakes anybody up, regardless of how well you sleep. The concern I have, once again, is that if this exemption goes through, is that it's carte blanche. It's a blank check to pull up trucks at 4:30 in the morning, whatever else. So that was my concern.
So I understand that there is a
If there's some kind of middle
process.
ground where we can say, listen, on Thursday nights or days that you pour concrete, we're going to work till 10 o'clock on buffing the concrete, I'm okay with that. I just want somewhere where we can all work together and get this done.
But it's the backing up of the vehicles that's the
big time.
the most disruptive.
Big time.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no further comments, I'll call the vote to receive and refer the comments of the delegate. All those in favor? Opposed? That passes. Thank you, Mr. Reid.
Thank you so much.
Okay, our next delegate is Mr. Peter Smith, representing Regency Acres Ratepayers Association regarding the planning consultant report to council. Please state your name, sir, and be reminded that you have 5 minutes for your delegation.
I will in a minute.
You'll receive a little signal there when there's 1 minute left.
Pardon me?
You'll receive a signal when there's 1 minute left.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, and members of council, both old and new. Congratulations. We wish you success in your terms of office. My name is Peter Smith, and I am president of the Regency Acres Ratepayers Association. My delegation tonight deals with council's decision last September to hire a consultant who is expert and experienced in development of mature residential neighborhoods and to provide an information report for the public planning meeting. We understand that the planning partnership has been hired to produce this final report for the January 2019 council meeting. Mayor Marakos indicated to us when we met on November 30th that he expects this report to address site plan controls, zoning changes to align with the official plan, and design guidelines for stable neighborhoods. Excuse me. It is our understanding that the town planning staff is to provide zoning bylaw and other official data to the consultants, plus copies of delegations from past council meetings, as well as discussions with the ratepayer associations of the affected areas. To date, only the Town Park and the Aurora Heights associations have met with the planning staff. On behalf of RARA, I responded to planning staff's emails about meeting. Unfortunately, we are still waiting for a response about setting a date. In our view, this is unacceptable for the following reasons. In our meeting last April with the Planning Department, the RARA executive provided some general recommendations based on the redevelopment that was occurring in our area. Since then, our association has done extensive research about the bylaws and design guidelines in other Ontario communities. We have also witnessed further demolition and construction. In light of this research, our knowledge and understanding of redevelopment and design issues in mature neighborhoods has increased considerably. We now have additional recommendations to address the concerns of our association's members. Our key issues still include the following. Maximum building height must be measured to the peak of the roof and should be limited to 9 meters for two-story homes. Lower height should be considered for flat roof designs because of the visual mass of the building. Lot coverage should vary based on the type of structure, with lower coverage for two-story homes to help preserve privacy, sunlight, and airflow for adjacent homes. The most distressing part of this whole process is that none of the ratepayer groups have been allowed to meet directly with the consultants. We also have not been asked to provide copies of our delegations to council. This is important because it is thought that most of these presentations were not forwarded to the consultants. For this reason, we will supply the consultants with letters to the editor, comments to staff, and copies of our council presentations. We expect to see these reviews reflected in the consultant's report. This brings up a very serious question. Just what documents have been provided to the consultants to represent the needs and concerns of our 3 stable neighborhoods? We have recently asked for a copy of the complete information package the consultants received. The draft consultant's report is due next week. And as Ratepayers Associations, we have no idea what it will be based on. Thus, the Regency Acres, Town Park, and Aurora Heights Associations request that we be allowed to review and comment on the draft report before it is presented to Council in January. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. May I have a motion to receive and refer the comments of the delegation, moved by Councillor Gilliland and seconded by Councillor Humphreys. If you remain there for some questions, any questions or comments for the delegate? Okay, we have Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I'm not sure I'm clear. Your information is that all of the comments that the groups have made were not passed to the consultant? I don't know that.
We are not sure,
Okay.
And that's why we're questioning.
Okay, thank you. So that's one. Second, you've prepared comments. The groups have prepared comments that are going to go to the consultant this week.
They will be given to the mayor this evening for delivery to the planning partnership.
Thank you. So I'm pretty sure the draft report is coming back to us this week or beginning of next week, Mr. Muno? Well, anyway, I think it was the middle of December, so close.
Mr. Muno? Is this a question? Oh, no, so you can't question Mr. Muno at this time. Yeah. Did you want to bring this up in new business?
Well, I think I remember that it's going to come back to us shortly. So what you're asking for is that the comments that you're going to be sending in, that the consultant consider those for the final report to council?
That is correct.
And that you also want to look at the draft report?
If that is at all possible, yes.
Okay. Did I get all the points?
I'm sorry?
Did I get all the points? Okay. Thank you for coming.
Councillor Humphreys?
Thank you, Mr. Smith, for coming this evening. I appreciate it. And so I did understand. I thought the consultant was going to reach out to the ratepayers, but I could have that wrong, have that incorrect. But we'll follow up under new business to see what the process was supposed to be and see what we can do in order to make sure that obviously the mayor will send your questions to the consultant, but just understand what can be done before we get our report, that those questions will be answered by them, and ensure that we get a fulsome report when they're ready to present to us. So thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you. If there are no, Councillor Gilliland.
I just want to thank you very much for coming and speaking today. I know this has been something that your association and 2 other associations have been bringing to council quite a bit, and I think it's great that you're asking for this information, and I'm really thankful that you brought this to our attention. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Smith. May I have a motion to receive and refer the comments of the delegates? No, we'll call a vote, sorry. All those in favor? Opposed? That passes. Thank you. So that brings us to the consent agenda. Are there any questions on the items between C1 and C3? Sorry? Yeah. Councillor Gardner?
On the C1, I guess it's Ms. Van Leeuwen. So the customer service report for the residents, it's Access Aurora collecting and tracking residents' comments and concerns and complaints from start to finish, which is really important. I was reading the report. Is there anything I didn't see in the report any potential or current gaps, including accountability gaps, that we need to address?
Ms. Van Leeuwen.
Through you, Mr. Chair, they are not identified in this report. Going forward, we'd like to improve the report and identify these trends and gaps. So we will be working on this in the new year, this report, so it provides more informative, detailed information in terms of what the trends are, where the gaps are, and then use that data to inform decision making.
Thank you. And I think this is absolutely fantastic, but I'm wondering why any areas of concern weren't included in the report for us to know? Or will there be a further report for council to know if there might be concerns and how we're going to address them?
Ms. Van Leeuwen.
Through you, Mr. Chair, as I mentioned, going forward, we would like to improve the report and how we use that information to identify those gaps. We track over 100 different activities in the CRM, and there are subcategories. Yeah. So it could be pretty neutral across the board, and maybe there aren't any gaps, like clear gaps. We get a complaint, we log it, we track it, we resolve it, we close it.
Thank you, and it's very impressive, but like nothing else, it's not perfect. So I'm just trying to get more information for council. Will you be bringing that information back to us, or is that something that's going to be done within the CRM?
Our future reports will identify better information, provide better information.
Thank you. Thanks, staff, for their work, please.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I just have a quick question with regards to the planning applications before us, so if I could direct it to Mr. Ramuno.
Mr. Ramuno.
Mr. Ramuno, with regards to one of the newer applications, the Smart Centres, which was really an old application, it says here that the site plans to permit multi-building commercial development. Are they finally going to build some of those office towers that we've been requesting, or is this strictly just the retail components?
Mr. Rumino?
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, this is related to the site plan that was approved by council back in June, which is really the westerly portion is the commercial component. The easterly portion, the offices for a future application. So we don't have any timing on that. They are proceeding with the construction, the extension of Golding, and the 120,000 square feet of commercial space on the west side of Golding Avenue extension.
Since it says it's being circulated for comment, I'll say the same comment I said 8 years ago, is that we were having a hesitancy to approve more retail. We wanted to see more office space developed, and that's the same comment I'll have. I'm sure Councillor Geller remembers that from 8 years ago.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Gardner?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Rumino. Mr. Rumino, I'm looking at page 17, number 44. This is just as an example. So number 44 says that council has approved zoning bylaw site plan. We've even got the site plan agreement being approved, and then the file is inactive. So is this unusual? And in the next case it says inactive and file closed. So why? Do we just let it sit there? It's from May 2015.
Mr. Rumino?
To you, Mr. Chair. On this one, that is the commercial development that was approved just to the west of the Esso station. There has been a change in ownership. It should really indicate inactive. The previous update did include a site plan agreement was being prepared, but that has been put on hold because they are now currently trying to sell the property. So that will be updated essentially to say inactive. Site plan approval and zoning bylaw are in effect. And again, it has been a couple of years, but I don't see a need. It's very unlikely for us to withdraw those approvals because they are in keeping with the official plan. But at this point, the status will be updated to just inactive, pending a change in ownership and the new owner's plans.
Thank you. Number 62, sorry, page 24. This one has the same kind of thing. The application's been approved, it's inactive, and the file is closed. So are these just different circumstances around the developer, and that's why one would be closed and one would be still? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, that's a good point. Again, the reason why we wanted to keep that string of the status. So in that instance, similar to the last one, the last time we reported to council on this item 62, it was inactive. Since that time, the file has been closed. So we just wanted to keep that status for council with respect to that, the chain of events. But the newest information on this file is it has been closed. So that original site plan application has been closed because of the inactivity. And again, that applies to the, my apologies, to the previous application. Just some recalling, we do like to keep in place the status each time we report to council, just so council can see the change.
Thank you. Just a comment, because for members of the public who don't know, Mr. Rumino will be moving on to another position and be taking a lot of knowledge with you. So is all this in the files?
Mr. Rumino?
Through you, Mr. Chair. It's all in the files, and the last column identifies the planners who are responsible for those files. So they have the files, and they have the they'll be aware of the history on those applications.
Thank you. Could you tell those planners I need to have a little bit bigger print? That's a good idea, actually.
So if there are no further questions on C1 to C3, may I have a motion to approve consent agenda items C1 to C3? Mayor Marakis, Councillor Gilliland. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, that's carried. Okay, that brings us to our regular agenda items. Okay, we'll start with R1. Would someone move the staff recommendation? Yes. Yes, Councillor Thompson.
Since we did have a delegation, I'd like to suggest we move R2 forward.
Okay. Seconded by Councillor Humphreys. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that's carried. We'll move R2 forward. Okay. So R2, would someone move R2, the staff recommendation, please? That's... Okay, so Councillor Thompson will move it for receipt. Do I have a second? Yeah, to receive. Okay, Councillor Humphreys. Any questions or comments? Councillor Humphreys?
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. Just a couple of questions. So I guess we've heard from the delegate, and we should be, like, just to make sure that this construction site currently today should follow the current bylaw, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Is that what the normal bylaw is, through you, Mr. Chair? Just to confirm.
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Chair, for construction activity, the restriction is 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. the following morning.
Right, perfect. And so obviously we've had some issues. Hopefully we can get those under control, because it sounds like things are happening at 4 a.m. I don't know if you've heard anything, or through Mr. Chair, if we've had some loud complaints or anything like that.
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Bylaw Services has attended this site on several occasions, including, I think, every day last week prior to 7 a.m. and did not observe any violations. Now, have they been there every day over the last 2-3 months? Not. We have not, but we have committed an officer to attend regularly. We have not yet observed any violations prior to 7 a.m. We've been unable to attend late in the evening just due to staffing constraints and resources.
Sure. Okay, that's fair. So my question is then, for this allowance of nonstop, I guess, what is the start and stop time, or is it a 24/7 rotation? Is that what we're asking for? And
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
So Lisgar Construction is the construction company, and they have identified that the concrete placing starts at around 10 a.m. and ends at about 3 p.m. And then the concrete starts to set, so it needs to cure, and they have to be able to walk on it in order to trowel it. So that takes a couple hours for it to cure. And then the finishers begin their work sort of late afternoon, early evening, and that continues to approximately 1 a.m. So that's kind of the typical pour of a day.
Okay. And what happens if this doesn't happen? Like, what if we don't allow the noise, or what if we say till 10 p.m. or something like that? What happens?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Chair, likely the end product will be substandard.
Right. So we have a problem. The problem that I'm worried about, is just that, well, it sounds like there's some issues today, and what are we going to do about those? It sounds like, the delegate mentioned that's probably not the constant hum of the sound that's the issue. It's the backing up of the big noisy trucks and all the beeping and things of that nature. Is there anything that can be done with that? And secondly, how long is this going to go on for, this noise bylaw exemption?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Chair, in terms of the length of time required to complete the building, they are requesting this noise exemption until approximately September of 2019 in order to complete the building construction. In terms of the other noise, as I mentioned, we had an officer attend each day this week prior to 7 a.m. and we will continue to monitor the site going forward, because we do have officers on duty overnight now for our winter maintenance program, so we can also have them attend the site to ensure that other construction activities are compliant. Lisgar Construction has committed to complying with the 7 a.m. or 7 p.m. restriction to 7 a.m. restriction for all other construction activities. So we will assign an officer to monitor to ensure.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to hear what other questions are presented around the table, because I am a little bit concerned just in terms of what we heard today from the delegation, and then just allowing the noise exemption. It sounds like we have to allow, for this process to occur, but how do we do it in the best way possible moving forward and controlling the additional noises of the diesel trucks running and idling in front of homes and so on. So we really need to think about how we can do this with the least disruption as possible. But I'd like to hear what my peers have to say and go from there. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Humphreys. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through you to Ms. Van Leeuwen. Ms. Van Leeuwen, I tend to agree with the delegate that, I think they came looking for a reasonable solution, some sort of compromise. And so before us, we have a request for an exemption. And I guess my question to you is it one or the other? Is it either they comply with the bylaw or we exempt them and give them carte blanche? Could we not find some sort of compromise or solution to meet the needs of both parties?
Ms. Van Leeuwen.
Through you, Mr. Chair. In terms of the pour, it is a standard common practice in order to get the end product. So there are constraints around the continuous pour. That concrete it takes time to batch, it takes time to set, it takes time to trowel. It is what it is. In terms of other construction activities, like I said, Lisgar Construction is committed to complying with the noise requirements. When we did an exemption similar to this for the construction of the condominium at Wellington and Yonge, and at the time we had a process in place for notification. So the construction company would notify us when they would be pouring, and they would also notify sort of their neighbors in terms of so that we can manage expectations. So they would contact us every week sort of with a schedule. They would also provide notice to adjacent property owners. So we can work out a process to some degree that would provide that notice, manage expectations, and that keep people informed of activities.
And how long would that process go on for Centro?
Ms. Van Leeuwen.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe at least a year.
So similar to what
Yeah.
being requested here?
Yes.
Thank you. And just one more question, if you mind, through you to Ms. Van Leeuwen. You said that they start at 10 a.m. Is there a reason why they start the pour process at 10 a.m. as opposed to 7 a.m.? I'm just trying to back them up a few hours.
As I mentioned, there's a batch time required for concrete, so just even to mix the concrete and allow it, the batch time usually takes a couple of hours, and to have that, like it's timing and it's finicky, and so I'm thinking that's why 10 a.m. They start the batch early in the morning. By the time they get it to the site and it's ready to pour, it takes time.
Yeah. And I'm sure you can understand, I mean, I don't think it's unreasonable to ask them not to be conducting work at 4 a.m. I mean, that's certainly an ungodly hour for most people around that community. So, thank you.
Councillor Gallo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see two issues here. I was prepared to support part of this in terms of the exemption for this project, because I've been through this before and I understand what needs to be done. And it appears that the delegate, at least, didn't have a problem with this part of it, the troweling of the concrete. They don't seem to have a problem with it. But during this process, we've come to understand that there's maybe a bigger issue, and that's prior to 7 a.m. and after 7 a.m. outside of the troweling of the concrete. That this seems to be an issue. And I'm wondering, I'm happy to hear bylaw has been going out to the site and hasn't seen any occurrences. I'm wondering what the results were of the complaints from the residents in the area when they did call bylaw. I understand from the delegate that it was many times, and were there any actions taken when they did call, and Do you have a sense of what took place?
Ms. Van Loan?
Through you, Mr. Chair. As mentioned, we have responded by actually changing schedules so that we're able to attend the site prior to 7 a.m. On occasion, this past week, we've had an officer attend, like I said, every day. But we did have on a few occasions in November, officers attend prior to 7 a.m. and I would say like as early as 5:30, 6 a.m. in the morning. And on those days, they didn't observe any activity at this site. I do recall that one of the officers, the first time we attended, there was construction activity occurring on Leslie. The region was undertaking construction activity. There was other activities in the area, but not at this particular site. So noise travels in unusual ways, and it could be coming from other sources. I don't know for sure, but like I said, at the time that we have attended, we have not observed violations.
And through you, Mr. Chair, were those visits as a result of residents calling in and bylaw officers going to the site and investigating? Or was it a routine to go there and take a look at the construction site?
Ms. Van Loan?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it was a result of complaint, yes.
So to date, as far as the town of Aurora is concerned, we have not identified any, bylaw has not identified any construction activity contrary to the bylaw.
Ms. Van Loan?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct.
I don't know if that's alarming or I don't know. Maybe it's very, very difficult to you know, once they call in and we get out there, then it's all gone and all of that. So I mean, my issue is how to deal with that other part. Perhaps some recordings of, I mean, I've done it in the past. I've recorded incidents in my neighborhood and then sent it off to bylaw and said, you know, here's the proof that it happened in case, you know, you're not there in time. And then that way, at least staff can do something to the construction company and make sure they're well aware, fines or whatever it needs to happen so it stops. And so they're well aware that it's not acceptable for that to happen. In terms of the second part of the resolution, having delegated authority, I'm hesitant there, and it speaks to it going straight to council. Maybe my preference would be for it to come to a GC, just so at least I could review it, because what I would like to see in there is some type of communication plan that, as you stated, the construction company would notify you, and then somehow the residents in the area or businesses wherever it is in town are notified that this is happening and they're well aware of it prior to it happening. So those are my comments.
Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. What Mr. Reid is talking about is very common. We had this problem on Tyler, and they weren't even building. They were just taking down the building, and the trucks were idling way before 7. The workers were noisy. We had this on Brookland. I mean, this is a very common problem, and I think it is alarming because we are going to be doing more infill development, and we need to ensure that our bylaws are respected. And I don't know what you're going to do about that, or whoever the appropriate person is, but something has to be done about it, because these are our residents and we're hurting their quality of life. With the second issue, I remember we do this, you know, for a 48-hour period. I must have missed the Centro permission. But are you saying that they want permission from now till next September to be doing this? And how often are they going to be doing this?
Ms. Van Loan?
Through you, Mr. Chair, they are requesting the exemption from now until September 2019 in order to complete the building. Will it happen every night? No. Like I said, what we did with Centro was worked out a process for notification to the town, the residents, the adjacent property owners, in terms of when those pours would be occurring. So they're not going to happen every day from now until September. It will happen in blocks of time as they progress floor by floor.
Well, based on the way the motion is worded, I certainly couldn't approve it. I would like to have more information. I would like to know how many times they're going to be doing this and, what the residents can expect, and maybe there should be compensation for the residents. If this is, maybe this is standard building practice, but it shouldn't be standard building practice in Aurora, where we're trying to protect the quality of our residents' lives. So perhaps you'll have some more information for next week.
We'll go to Councillor Gildan for the first time.
Thank you. Just a question through you, Mr. Chair. Do you know if they've been on site between 2 and 4 a.m. to observe?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't believe not between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., but we have been there very early in the morning, prior to 7 a.m. Like I mentioned, over the winter months, we do have officers assigned for winter maintenance, so we could possibly monitor the site as well over the next several months.
Okay. Question about the construction of it with the troweling, which is the part that goes early in the morning. Is it a machine that they're using to do it, or is this a hand thing, or can you explain that?
It's a machine, yes. Yeah, so like I said, the concrete needs to set so they can walk on it, so it doesn't, and then they trowel using a machine.
And does this machine require noise to back up as well? I'm just trying to figure out where this backing up noise is coming from, what kind of construction is causing between 2 and 4 a.m. these trucks backing up, and is it necessary if we can pinpoint where this issue is?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
I'm not, to be honest, through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if the machine beeps when they're backing up, but I don't believe so. It's just a troweling machine.
Through you, Mr. Chair, is there a way that maybe we could find out from the construction company whether or not we can reduce the noise of the backing up of the vehicles, and whether or not they can start their mixing earlier versus, I don't know what time they're mixing, because that to me is probably not a lot of noise. So that way when residents are up and out to work, perhaps that's not the cause of the issue.
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Certainly, I can contact, well, we do have a representative from the construction company here today, and I can certainly have a conversation with him and bring back some additional information, or he may wish to delegate next week to respond to some of your questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Marakis for the first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Councillor Gartner pointed out, this is an ongoing issue that we've dealt with many times throughout my 4 years last term. We're constantly hearing how developers, builders, when they are working on sites, they do tend to take liberty with our 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Restrictions, and they go beyond that, and it affects the quality of life for our residents. And I agree. And I think that moving forward, and I've said it many times, I think that maybe we need to look at making stronger penalties within our construction mitigation plan. And maybe Mr. Ramuno, well, you might not be here, but our new director of planning, and maybe Ms. Van Leeuwen and myself, and a few of us maybe sit down with the development community and tell them straight out, listen, you need to adhere to our construction mitigation plans when you're coming into our town and developing, to make sure that you adhere to those policies. And if you don't, there will be a penalty. And I think that's where it starts. But as far as this one in front of us tonight, I think that maybe before next week, maybe Mr. Reed, maybe some of the other residents can sit down with you, Ms. Van Leeuwen, and with the construction company, and try to come to that compromise that we can find a way to deal with this and make sure that the quality of life for our residents in that area is not being affected. And I'm just curious, as far as the actual exemption, is it just for the concrete pour?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. All other construction activities, they have stated that they're committed to complying with our noise bylaw. So it's just for the continuous pour.
So thank you. Through you, as a follow-up to Ms. Van Leeuwen, so we would still be monitoring any other activity, trucks that are idling, and then also trucks that are idling, diesel trucks. Would that not also fall under our anti-idling bylaw if they're idling within a certain period of time?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do not have an anti-idling bylaw.
I thought we had a minor one.
There is a provision in our noise bylaw that speaks to the idling of vehicles. So we could take action under our noise bylaw. As I mentioned, there is a provision in there that we could take some action on.
Thank you. So maybe when you have those discussions with the construction company, you can reiterate some of the comments here tonight from council that we strongly expect them to adhere to our policies, and if not, then I believe we as a council will need to make those necessary changes to add in some strong penalties to move forward. But I expect that we probably will do that in the future, but let's see if we can come to a compromise on this one before next week. Thank you.
Councillor Humphreys for the second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Mayor covered it for me. I think it's great suggestions for sure, absolutely. And just a quick question through Mr. Mayor to Ms. Van Leeuwen. When we allowed Central to have this exemption and the proactive notification, did we have any complaints or did that go well? I don't remember hearing many complaints. I do remember us giving the exemption though.
Ms. Van Leeuwen.
Through you, Mr. Chair. It went very well. We did not receive many complaints, if any at all, that I recall, and it did, like I said, go on for about a year. We did put a process in place, as I said, in terms of communication and notification to adjacent property owners as well as to town staff so that we were aware of when this noise was occurring. So, through Mr. Chair, I think the issue is not this process that we're talking about and allow an exemption for. It's the contracting, the work that's being done that shouldn't be done anyway. So I don't think this issue is the problem. It's the construction work that they're doing outside of our bylaw. So I totally believe that if we do provide, a strong message to the contractor that if we hear any other issues, that there'll be a stronger penalty, then I think that'll ward off them causing these neighbors some trouble, and the actual process of what they're doing isn't going to be a big deal, because I know people that their backyard was at the Chantro building and they didn't complain about the noise. There was all those residents very close to that building. So that process doesn't sound it's probably like a soft hum like you mentioned, but these diesel trucks and backing up is construction work being done. So appreciate that, and I think having more of an enforcement during these times and probably could do even sooner than later if we can somehow get some of our bylaw officers on site at the early morning hours if possible. That would be great, like between the 2 and 4 a.m. when people are getting woken up and children are being woken up beforehand. So thank you.
Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. Following on those comments, and I know that it's hard because developers subcontract a lot of the work, and the developers may be, or the construction companies may be interested in working with the town, but then they're subcontracting, so then we have to get to the subcontractors as well. But following on what the mayor said, to have upset residents calling us and to have our bylaw people out at 5 or 6 in the morning, we need whoever is doing the work in our town to follow our bylaws. And I would like to know at some point in the nearish future what penalties could be put in place, because I'm not sure we can put them in the construction mitigation plan. Maybe we can, and maybe what other municipalities do, but if you give a little, people take a little. We need to be. Thank you. You saw that? You heard that? Thank you. But seriously.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Again, through you to Ms. Van Leeuwen, just in regards to the delegated authority, just so I get a sense, staff are essentially asking that for any future applications that the authority be delegated to do this. You mentioned Central previously, and we have this one for, how often do we see these kind of requests for these continuous pour? Are we talking, one a month, a handful a year?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Chair. We had this request with Centro, and this is the second time that I'm aware of that we've had this request. But as we go forward with larger construction projects, we will see this more often, as this is a typical cast-in-place concrete slab for a larger construction project. So as we develop the infill developments and things like that, I think we will see this more often.
Can you quantify more often?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's going to depend on development applications and going forward, and what we receive in terms of our construction permits and things like that. So it's hard for me to put a number on it, but Mr. Ramuno may be able to speak to that.
Sure. Happy to, for Marco to weigh in.
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Chair, as Ms. Van Leeuwen mentions, anytime there's a multi-story building, they would require the noise exemption, because they'd be required to cure and trowel the concrete overnight, late evening, early morning. So the first one would have been Centro. This is the second one. Anytime there's a multi-story apartment building or an office building, they require the noise exemption.
So through you to Mr. Ramuno, for example, the application that's before us at Wellington and Industrial, if that were to be approved, this would be an example of one that continues. And so I guess from my perspective then, with regards to delegating authority, I think there are situations where, as others have put, it would be good to see it in front of us, just so that we have confidence with regards to how it's going to be managed for the community, communicated, and what measures are going to be mitigated. So I'm a little hesitant at this point to move forward with the second or third clause.
Councilor Gallo.
And I was going to say the same thing. In fact, if we didn't have the authority, we wouldn't have been aware of some of these issues. So we haven't, I think we could probably deal with the three that are here, but we haven't really dealt with the other issues that the resident has, and I'm not sure how to tackle that, maybe outside of this meeting, or try to figure out. I really wouldn't want those other issues to be left on the table and not addressed, because to me they're more significant than what we're doing before us in terms of this report. So I'm in favor of 1 and 2, and I would put a pause on the third one.
Thank you. Mr. Ramuno, did you say earlier that most of the troweling will happen, you said 2 a.m., like in the wee hours in the morning?
To you, Mr. Chair. No, as Ms. Van Leeuwen mentioned, typically it starts late afternoon, early evening, but it can take a number of hours, and it may occur well into early 1, 2 in the morning. And I think their request is from up to 1 a.m. So it does take a number of hours for them to trowel the area the floor that they've poured. So that's their request, is until 1 a.m.
And just for your opinion, with your experience in construction, would you also agree that that it's not the troweling and the pouring that causes the noise? It's all the ancillary activities that go around that causes majority of the noise?
To you, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, the exemption is really for just the troweling on site. There's my understanding is a couple workers with the trowels. There should be no heavy equipment or trucks, at 2 or 3 in the morning. I know Ms. Van Leeuwen has spoken to her staff, and I've spoken to mine, and I've spoken to the project manager on site, and we will continue to speak to him. The representative is here, that those trucks shouldn't be there early in the morning. There's no need for those trucks. The troweling is really just done by a couple of individuals with the trowels, and there's no pouring occurring late in the evening, early in the morning. There's no concrete trucks out. There should be no concrete trucks out at that hour or other heavy equipment.
Okay. Thank you. So with regards to some of the noise issues that the presenter offered during open forum. During the delegate mentioned in the wee hours in the morning, perhaps we can, outside of council, we can ensure that bylaw tries to make themselves available during those hours, sometimes to ensure that the quality of life or quality of sleep is adhered to. If there are no further questions, but Mr. Clerk, would it be appropriate? What I'm hearing is that we separate the vote. We vote on item 1 and 2, and we'll vote on 3 separately. Does that sound? Fair? Okay. That is correct. Okay. So, motion to receive. Can I call the vote then if there's no further questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that carries. Thank you. So we'll go to item R1. Would someone like to move the staff recommendation for R1, please? Councillor Humphreys, and seconded by Mayor Marakis. Any questions or comments on R1, please? Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Some comments with respect to the Heritage Advisory Committee. We're taking the number of members down by 2, and it's a working committee. So I would suggest that we try this for a period of time, and then if the committee feels that they need more members to help them with the work, that we would change those terms of reference. Thank you. I spoke to the CAO about this earlier. Sometimes under new business, we'll get a comment like staff answered a committee member's question, and we have no idea what the question was and what the answer is. So with respect to questions that are asked of staff under new business, and I've had a lot of feedback on this, I think that we should make an attempt to say what the question was and what the answer is so that the general public will know, and that it will also be on the record for the committee to refer to. I'm leaving that with Mr. CAO for the moment. I have a question on page 15. Part F, it says a member means a person including a council member appointed to serve on a committee established under this policy, and may include a member of council unless stated otherwise. I'm not sure who this question goes to. Does that mean that we can have committees that do not have council members on them?
Mr.
Yes?
CEO? Sorry, Mr. Clerk.
The governance committee maybe being one.
Certainly, the
Thank
governance
you.
committee, the committee of adjustment would be examples of that.
Thank you. So with the others, they all have, in terms of reference, they all have council members, so that terms of reference would need to be changed to not have a council member. Thank you. On page 19, 1010, the third line. I don't know what this means. Does this mean that we don't have to have minutes for board meetings? That the chair has to direct it, the chair of the local board has to direct that there will be minutes prepared?
Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. I think it's more of just if a subcommittee is struck or a more informal committee. Any committee that council strikes, local board, ad hoc committee, would have minutes that will be received by council. So I think it's more meant for the capture, just a more informal meeting, a subcommittee meeting, things of those nature.
That's not what it means. That's not what it's saying to me. So perhaps you could check on that. I mean, a subcommittee doesn't have to have formal meetings, but it's just talking about committee coordinator of local board shall prepare local board's meetings if so directed by the chair. Could you just look into that? Because I think we have to have minutes for all of our meetings, whether they're boards or committee. Thank you. On page 20, it's talking to the number of times people on committees can speak. I know that Mayor Marakis has been out to a lot of meetings, and we never limit, or the committees that I've been on, we never limit it to a number of times to speak. And I'm wondering where this came from, and I don't think it's appropriate at the committee level. Because there's a lot of discussion, there's a lot of back and forth discussion, and it's not like a formal meeting like in council. Do you want to comment on that, Mr. Clerk?
Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think there was some concern that some of our committee meetings would go a bit late into the night, usually 10, 10:30, or could be 10 or 10:30, I shouldn't say usually. And I think this is just a way to try and limit those occurrences.
Thank you. Well, it is often the Heritage Committee that goes late, and sometimes people are speaking too much, but sometimes we need the conversation. So that would be up to the discretion of the chair if they wanted to speak. Thank you. 13.2 on the same page, it says the clerk will consider any comments received and prepare final. Sorry, let's start at the beginning. So the clerk circulates the draft minutes to the members of the committee. Then the committee makes comments, and then the clerk prepares the final meeting minutes, but only has to consider the comments of the committee. So in fact, it's staff who gets to make the decision about what was being spoken about at the committee and what the committee thinks was being spoken at. I really don't think that's right. I think if there's changes made, it has to go back to the committee, and the committee has to say, yeah, this is what we did at this meeting. I don't think it's up to staff to make that decision.
Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I certainly understand your concerns, Councillor Gardner. I think we've spoken about this before. I think, I guess my position on the matter is that staff are the impartial, coordinator, secretary, minute takers at the meeting. Sometimes you run into situations where a committee member wants exactly what they said in the minutes, and that's just not something that we're able to do under the provisions of the Municipal Act. So I think we just want to maintain that impartial voice, and at the end, if there's a dispute between two members of the committee, our decision is final.
Isn't that what we're doing now? This looks like okay, this is what we're doing now then. Okay, I know council hates when I do this, but I've spoken to the Heritage Committee. It's now 7 members. It was before 9. I have no idea. So we can just take that under advisement if we need to add more members to that. And something that I found kind of strange is, and maybe Councillor Humphreys can relate to this. It says under duties and functions of the Heritage Committee, yes, to promote heritage conversation within the town, but it says through newsletters, guides, exhibits, and other educational material about notable buildings, streets, and districts. Councillor Humphreys, I don't think the Heritage Committee ever does that. It's an old one, so maybe it's something that should be worded differently.
Is that a question to Councillor Humphreys or Mr. Clerk?
It's a question to the clerk, the CAO, the mayor, whoever. I don't think that's what the Heritage Advisory Committee does. It promotes heritage conservation within the town. Mr.
Clerk, would you care to comment?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think with all the terms referenced, we provide a broad mandate. So we just wouldn't want to, although the Heritage Committee hasn't historically done these things, we wouldn't want to limit their ability to in the future.
If I want to join a committee and I look at the terms of reference, if I want to join a committee and I look at the terms of reference and it says that's what I have to do, then there's a problem here. So could you just work on it? Thanks, Mr. CEO. And the last question for now is on page 29. It's talking about the Governance Ad Hoc Review Committee. It says the committee shall be comprised of 3 or 5 citizen members. So I've never seen anything like that. Are we? Yeah, I'm sorry, I never noticed it, but I mean, are we picking 3 or are we picking 5? Like, who decides?
We do.
The council did? So is the council now picking a number?
When we deal with it.
At the time of nomination?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Gallo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of my concerns is the amalgamation of a few committees. And I understand the rationale. More efficiencies can be achieved by consolidating Parks, Recreation, Cultural Services Advisory Committee, Environmental Advisory Committee, and the Trails and Active Transportation Advisory Committee to form the Community Advisory Committee. My concern is each of those committees would have had at least 5 public members to them, and now we're reducing it. The terms of reference says 5 for this joint committee. So we're reducing community involvement by about 10 people. And I'm just wondering if we can put a little more thought into those, perhaps. I can certainly see Trails and Parks and Rec together. I understand we may have a sports council if that follows through. But to me, environmental should be on its own. So I have some issues, and maybe I'm okay with trying it and see how it goes. But at first blush, to reduce that amount of residents, listen, I ran on a platform of more engagement, not less engagement from the public, and I get the feeling that's what this is doing. So I have that concern. In terms of on page 20 of 30, 13.4, all committee recommendations shall proceed to an agenda management team meeting where senior staff will decide whether the recommendations should proceed to council to be enacted or whether council could benefit from a further report from staff before making a decision. And I'm just wondering, is the current process any different? Are we adding a kind of a layer there? And if so, is there any restriction in terms of what the community committee is presenting to, well, I want to say to council, but, and in prior days, committees would advise council. Currently, the way it's structured, committees advise staff. So I'm trying to get my head around what change would that occur in terms of from the community input to council. Is there an extra filter there?
Mr. Nadarasny, do you want to take that one?
Certainly. Through you, Mr. Chair. What this is attempting to do is avoid some of the confusion that existed in the past when comments would come from committees. The minutes would be passed here at council, And in some cases, there was an expectation that that meant it was happening just by virtue of passing the minutes. In other cases, particularly when it was something more complex, it was, I think, generally understood by everybody that that would require a report or other action, especially if it involved spending. But it was fairly ambiguous as to what the next step was. And we even had some confusion at the last term of council regarding resolution on a gym. You know, what was exactly meant, what was exactly going to happen as a result of the committee having a motion and approving the motion and that being in the minutes. So what this is designed to do is ensure that those things go through staff so that a staff report, a proper staff report would follow. Council would be given all the information they need to make a decision on that recommendation or on that opinion of the committee. We had other occasions where, quite frankly, something came from a committee, the minutes were passed, and it was being done, and there was not even really an opportunity, unless council were point blank asked a question. Some of those things went by without even a staff comment, and when we had maybe concerns about the implementation or what the ramifications were, I really wanted a little more time to give a full picture to council. So this is designed to clarify that as they leave a committee meeting, don't expect that by virtue of that decision, that as long as council approves the minutes, it's going to happen. Obviously, councillors are going to be involved in those conversations. We'll see motions coming from councillors sometimes to hurry those things up, to give staff direction. But it would always involve a staff report at least.
And that's fine. I don't have a problem with that, and I would definitely agree. And I think perhaps if there's some type of circle back to the committee, particularly if you know all their work didn't become fruitful, we should be communicating why or whatever. They should be in the loop in terms of if whatever work they did, there's reasons why it didn't happen. So generally those were my comments, so I'm not sure how to, I don't think I'm comfortable approving the way the committee structure is now. I'd like to put some more thought into it and perhaps break out maybe one of those or maybe two. I'm not sure how much work was put into putting those together. Again, my fear is that we're reducing public input, and I really don't want to go there. My preference is to increase public input.
Mr. Nazrasny, could you answer one of the first question regarding the merger of the three committees? You had some rationale behind that. If you could share with the rest of us, please.
Certainly. Through you, Mr. Chair. Those three groups were merged into one. Mostly as a function of, quite frankly, not having enough agenda items for them. And so there was many meetings that were canceled because there was nothing. There were other meetings where we had one item on the agenda, and quite frankly, we were making stuff, making material to bring to these meetings. If council wants to involve more people and wants to separate some of those things, such as environment, that could definitely be done. My suggestion would be, though, that for something like environment, the frequency would be changed to quarterly or something like that to reflect, the volume of material that actually is going to come through those committees. So it's just that to have all of those committees on a monthly or semi-monthly basis, we were quite frankly quite often starved for material.
Could I speak to that?
Go ahead, Mr. Keller.
In days gone by, those committees were very active. And I'm not sure if it's a result of kind of a change in structure in terms of what those committees were required to do. Staff would, I want to say download, or council would download a lot more to them. And maybe that's why in days gone by, and I've sat on at least all of those that are mentioned, and we met monthly and every agenda was packed. So it's kind of a change of philosophy, and maybe that's how we resulted in this. My preference is to take a look at it and see how can we, engage the public in a more meaningful way, as opposed to, and I get what's happening, but let's put some more thought toward it. Is all I'm, I guess, saying.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through you to the clerk. Mike, just so I understand the report in front of us, I mean, for the most part, the report really, and I appreciate the track changes as always, it just mirrors what we had last term, except for where it's been crossed out and the red's been added, and really those are just the only changes with the exception of the Community Advisory Committee. Is that correct?
Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would draw attention to the citizen chairs as well. That is a different thing that we're proposing for this term of council.
Perfect. Appreciate the clarification there. And I do agree with Councillor Gallo with respect to the Community Advisory Committee. I like the concept. I'd like to see it go forward, but I recognize that 5 citizen members may not present us with a good enough cross-section to cover the various issues being presented. And so, I'd be supportive of increasing the citizen members to either 7 or I'm not really keen on having a 9, 11 member committee, but certainly to 7, and maybe part of the solution is just to do it as a 2-year term, do it 2 and 2, and say have it for the first 2 years, and then council can see how effective it is or not effective it is, and then reassess at that time whether to extend the membership or splinter off some of the groups. I certainly think there's always the opportunity within the committees to have subcommittees to deal with specific issues. Having more citizen members on it gives you that opportunity to have them participate in the subcommittees or bring on specific people that have relative experience. So, I did, as chair of Parks and Rec, struggle the last term with regards to having enough issues that we felt really warranted the volunteers' time and energy and input, and gave them enough, enough to digest. And so I like the idea of combining things so that, they're not wasting their time. And so I'm okay with moving forward with it, but if other members of council wanted to increase participation, I'd be okay with that.
Mayor Marakis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to make a quick comment that I'd like to see us move forward with it and try it out. I agree that if at the end of the day, if after we try it out, it's not working the way we think it should, then we can look at making some changes. But I do definitely agree that I'd like to see an increase number of citizen members. I don't think 5 is enough. I wouldn't mind going up to that 9. I know Councillor Thompson, you're saying 7, possibly 9, but I wouldn't mind seeing 9. I think that brings us to a more reasonable number and I think it would also give us, enough citizen members there that would possibly be able to have a certain number from each expertise, of a field of expertise that we want to be in that and make up that committee. So I think 9 would be a good number for myself to move forward with. So I'll leave it in the hands of council and see where we want to do. Actually, through you, Mr. Chair, to the clerk, can we change that number tonight here?
Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Chair, certainly we can change it tonight. I was going to just suggest, as you were making those comments, that when council goes to select the members of the various committees, if council sees the applications and 9, they have 9 great candidates and support all 9, then we can just do a simple motion at the time of the selection as well. So it's up to council in terms of when they want to make the change, but it can be changed at any time.
It's perfect. Okay. So, like I said, I'll leave it in council's hands, and we'll decide it when we move forward with those applications. Thank you.
Councillor Gilliland.
I just had a question about page 17, 7.4. Council members who are not members shall be entitled to, and it lists various things that they are allowed to do at other advisory committees they don't sit on. And at one point, they were allowed to go to the closed session portion of the meeting. Is it now saying that you are no longer allowed to attend those closed session meetings as a council member if you're not sitting on the committee anymore? Is that a change?
Mr. Clerk?
Yes, that is a change. I would say that in my experience, I've never seen a advisory committee go into closed session, so I think it's more of a just a provision or catch-all maybe, but we are suggesting that change.
And was there something that led to that change?
There is nothing that, through you, Mr. Chair, there's nothing that led to the change specifically. I think we did review best practices, and we did certainly see that provision extended in other municipalities as well.
Mayor Marakis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to clear up a point on that. And those that sat on the library board can correct me if I'm wrong, but I do recall any time that I attended a library board meeting and I sat in, if the library board did go into closed session, I would have to step out of the room. So that was the normal practice, but I guess this just puts it in there and makes it official.
Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. I agree with enlarging that committee and trying it out for a couple of years. I do think personally that the Environmental Advisory Committee should sit on its own. But we also can, speaking with the mayor, we can also form subcommittees if there are particular issues. I've seen closed session when we pick the, the citizen of, well, we don't pick citizen of the year, but the 5-year awards, the 10-year awards, the 15-year awards, best neighbor, all those awards. I think you have to go into closed for that. Yeah.
Mr. Clerk, you had a comment?
I just want to make council aware of a typo in the recommendation. The community, it says Community Services Advisory Committee. That should be just the Community Advisory Committee. We didn't want to make it sound like it's just the Community Services Department. So again, my apologies. If the staff report is, or if the staff recommendation is approved, it will show up at the council agenda as just the Community Advisory Committee.
Okay, if there are no further questions or comments, I'll call the vote to receive the report.
Someone want to make a motion about the number of members? We can do that.
Next week.
Okay.
Okay, I'd like to put a vote then to receive the staff recommendation. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries, Mr. Clerk. That brings us to item R3. Someone like to move the motion, please? Anyone to move R3? Councillor Gilliland and seconded by Councillor Humphreys. Any questions or comments? Okay, if there's no questions or comments, then I'll call the vote. Councillor Gardner?
So from reading the report, it sounds to me like everything is, we're just bringing ourselves up to what the competition is charging and what our staff are being, the work of our staff. There's something on the property standards appeal. Could someone on staff, I don't really understand what that is. Is that after the, is that before it gets to court? You want a page number? It's on Schedule C. Page 2, thank you, Mr. CEO. Schedule C, page 2. Actually, page 2 of the report.
So, can Mr. Gardner, let me finance? Okay, Ms. Van Leeuwen.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's a fee associated with an appeal of a property standards order under the Building Code Act. So it's related to that process. The Building Code Act permits that anybody who receives an order to comply can appeal. We have the Property Standards Committee, which is the same as Committee of Adjustment, same people, and so it's a fee for that appeal process.
What if the appeal was successful?
Through you, Mr. Chair, then the fee would not apply. So if the appeal is successful and the order is withdrawn or modified, then that appeal would...
Thank you.
Yeah.
That seems fair. Thanks.
Okay, if there are no further questions or comments, I'll put Staff recommendation to a vote. All in favor? Opposed? That carries, Mr. Clerk. Brings us to R4, Town of Aurora website upgrade. Someone put that motion on the floor, please. Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Gardner. Comments? Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. Are we happy with the products and services of eSolutions?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we are, very much so.
Thank you. Have a lot of complaints about the website. I have complaints about the website. I'm looking forward to this. Thank you.
Councillor Kello.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, it's a long time coming. Extremely frustrated with the current system for many years, actually. In terms of searchability, I have one particular issue that perhaps can be addressed, and maybe it's not related to this, but I want to mention it, that there are times where there are reports on the website that are scanned in as images, and when you're doing that, you cannot search for text whenever you're doing a search, and that becomes very frustrating if you're trying to do a word search and you know it's there, but it doesn't pop up. So anyways, I think it's a practice that we shouldn't be doing. Everything that should be in there should be searchable. But I'm very happy to see what we're doing here, and I'm really looking forward to the end result.
Councillor Gilliland.
I'm really super excited about this because I have one heck of a time trying to find things on our website. So I'm really happy that we're having this upgrade happen. I'm glad that we're happy with eSolution. That was obviously a question I had as well, are they the right provider? Are they doing what we need? They're obviously offering something. Through you, Mr. Chair, a question I would have is, do you have any information as to what platform they're currently building under? Are they transitioning an upgrade from one platform to another, or is it the same and they're upgrading within that?
Ms. Mackenzie Smith.
Through you, Mr. Chair. That is really one of the bigger issues that we have with the website, is that the website was, through our joint agreement with Newmarket, was actually built on the SharePoint platform. And what this upgrade will allow us to do is actually, yes, thank you. We'll allow it to move to iCreate, which is the native CMS system for eSolutions, which I've built several websites using the iCreate system platform in the past, and it's much more user-friendly and easier to kind of create that navigation piece as opposed to the way a SharePoint website is built. So it would essentially be moving our existing SharePoint website, cleaning everything up, and then upgrading to that different CMS.
Through you, Mr. Chair, would that be HTML, JavaScript? What would the technical term be?
Through you, sir, I'm going to try not to get too, I won't get too technical. It's all of the above. There's obviously some HTML elements and JavaScript elements on it as well. But it's essentially what it does is, on our end, is really, really simple for staff to maintain. It's an essential, what you see is what you get content editor. And it's essentially kind of something similar to a extremely, extremely robust WordPress type of platform.
Thank you.
Councillor Humphreys.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm really same as Councillor Gilliland. I'm very excited about this. It's been long time coming. I know that we entered into a partnership with our neighboring municipality, Newmarket, and that was supposed to help us out. Obviously, we've learned that we've got a few struggles from the report's perspective, and obviously, perhaps our direction and where we want to go, and our neighbors may not be necessarily on the same page. Is that why we decided, let's do our own thing and move forward? Because I know we thought we'd get some economies of scale working with that, but just wondered how, just a little bit of background, if that's okay.
Sure.
Ms.
Through you,
Mackenzie
Mr. Chair.
Smith.
Back then, from what my understanding was, again, it was before my time, was that everybody was kind of on the same page in terms of timelines and resourcing as well for upgrading websites. Obviously, it is a very resource-intensive thing, so to get municipalities to match up with their needs and timing and resourcing all at the same time is obviously a bit more challenging. And you know, there's some things that our municipality would like to address sooner rather than later. And so we're just a little bit off in terms of timing. And the other issue before was that we agreed that we wanted to share the hosting solution. So we were hosting in Newmarket. And what I've outlined in this report is my recommendation that we do not continue with that particular hosting option.
Okay, perfect. So just a comment through you, Mr. Chair, is that it sounds like we'll be able to run these services in parallel, so that from a user perspective, we'll have like a cutover. We'll be able to continue to use the old website and then suddenly new, or are we sharing some of the platform? What I'm thinking here is, you know, our residents, you know, they'll suddenly they get nothing. So obviously that's going to be a transition plan.
Ms. Mackenzie Smith.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I mean, obviously the way it would work is we would launch and it would be a new website. What we've also done in the past as well, in the past when I've launched websites, is sometimes you have a little button on the side that says to see the old website, just to allow people a little bit of time for them to transition and get used to the new site. Obviously, I think the goal is for us to create a site that is, you know, I have to say municipal websites are by their very nature complex. We provide a large range and variety of services to a large, diverse audience. So they do obviously present some inherent challenges in terms of navigation and search, just by the very nature of what they're trying to do. But I think our goal is to make things much easier for people to find. And in doing so, you know, we don't want people to have to necessarily rely on that option to go back to an old website. What we want is something that they'll be easily able to use as soon as they get there.
Perfect. No, great. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to it too. Thank you.
Ms. Mackenzie Smith, so if in the search function, if I wanted to learn more about a motion that was brought forward a couple of years ago about some parking item or other, that agenda item or other related items will just pop up and it'll be as easy as that?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So to be perfectly honest, the systems there's two different search functions within the existing website. So there's the actual website search functionality, and then there's the agenda management system search functionality. So this report and what we would be doing from a communication standpoint with the website would not doesn't address the meeting management, the agenda management system that we have with PrimeGov right now as our vendor, from my understanding. That is a little bit different. Certainly there are reports that exist, particularly that are more historical in nature, that might also exist in other places on the website that wouldn't necessarily be in that system. And the idea is that moving over from our existing platform to the new platform, we would be cleaning up a lot of the documents that are either duplicates or aged out documents that no longer need to be there.
Okay, great. Thank you. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. Going to the top of page 3, the reason why the website hasn't come up earlier was the election. And you're talking about resourcing strains and concerns over making change. Okay. What is resourcing strains?
Ms. Mackenzie Smith.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we're referring to staffing at this particular staffing and internal resources to be able to make the changes.
Thank you. And on the bottom of this page, we're talking about if we do this, we'll be able to perhaps include the scope of work in the future. And the very bottom is talking about property tax calculator and a wastewater calculator. Would we also be including a water calculator in that, or would that be the resident's water meter?
Ms. Mackenzie Smith.
I'm sorry, maybe that's not a fair question to you.
through you, Mr. Chair, I would have to go in and look at exactly how it breaks down wastewater versus water consumption. The idea is that the tool would give you, gives you an idea of how much water you're actually using, and gives you an estimate based on the current price per cubic meter of what your water would be. Again, these are just ideas of things, services that eSolutions, our vendor, offers, and so that if we were moving forward with this and moving to the new platform, these are some of the options that would be available to us in the future.
Thank you. And it wasn't a well thought out question on my part because we have water meters. So I guess if residents want to know how much water they're using. Sorry.
Thank you. If there's no further questions, I'll put the staff recommendation to a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries, Mr. Clerk. We'll move on to item R5, approval of the 2019 meeting schedule. Can someone put that on the floor, please? Councillor Gardner, Councillor Thompson. Questions or comments? Councillor Gardner?
Just a really short comment. Just a reminder that it has the Jewish holidays on the calendar. The Jewish holidays always start the evening before at sundown. So in this case, it's I think there's a council meeting that's affected, but when we're considering what council is going to be doing or committees, if it says, for example, the 9th, it means that whatever committee is being held on the evening before on the 8th, that some people may not be able to attend. Yeah, yeah. And the most significant holiday is going to be starting on a Tuesday evening. So I won't be here. Thanks, Michael.
Okay, that's noted. Any other questions? Okay. So I'll put the staff recommendation on the floor. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Move to R6, 2018 year-end surplus, deficit financial control bylaw. Can someone move that, please? Councillor Gardner, Councillor Gilliland, questions or comments? Councillor Gallo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On page 6 of 7, the conclusions. As part of, it says on the last sentence, as part of the year-end procedure, staff will report back to General Committee as to the actual year-end results and the final surplus allocations made in 2018. I'm just curious to see how this process worked out last year. Where did we end up? If we had surpluses, where did they go? If we had deficits, where did they go? How did this work out for us? I'm not sure if anyone at the table can.
Mr. Nadrasny.
To you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Gardner may be able to speak to more. Mr. Gardner may be able to speak to more of the specifics. I don't recall exactly how, but according to the bylaw, it would define that other than specific reserves. So, for example, if winter control ran a surplus, and we ended up with a surplus in that fiscal year, then that winter control surplus would go to the winter reserve. So there's other possible reserves like that would have a rule associated with them, where there's an underspend, and then the bulk would go into the tax rate stabilization. So again, that's kind of basically what the bylaw spells out, is how those splits occur, and then the bulk would go to tax rate stabilization. But I'll turn over to Mr. Gardner for any more specifics you might have about the 2017 year end.
Mr. Gardner?
Yeah, we've been applying this process for the last few years, and it seems to be working fine. The bylaw and the accompanying report seems generally set out the options for us to use, depending on whether a shortfall or a surplus arises at year end. So that report we bring back once a year is concluded essentially explains what tools we actually use to take care of the resultant surpluses or deficits experienced. And as the CEO alluded to, Most commonly, surpluses are shared. Half the surplus goes towards rate stabilization reserve. The other half is shared by the repair and replacement reserves, et cetera, et cetera. And that is essentially outlined in the year-end report that we present to council in roughly a June time period.
So maybe I can just look at it myself to see what the actual results. So if someone, maybe staff could direct me to the report, and then I'll
I could provide it to you if you like.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Garner.
Thank you. I'd just like to make a comment on the Tax Rate Stabilization Fund. When this was first on our agenda many years ago, when it was first formed, the wording on it was for unexpected or unforeseen, and now it has changed to significant one-time or temporary pressures. So they're not the same thing to me, and I would like to know how that got changed. I'll leave that with you, Mr. CEO. And the other question is on stormwater budgets. We were going to do work on whether our stormwater budgets were sufficient, and I'm wondering where that is at, Mr. Gartner. Through you, Mr. Chair, could that be?
Mr. Gartner?
So your question is whether stormwater budgets are sufficient?
Right. I believe that it came out of the Finance Committee, and or at least was discussed at the Finance Committee. It was discussed at the council table about whether there was enough, whether we were charging enough for our stormwater, whether it was actually covering our costs and covering us being able to update our system, keep it maintained properly. There is a I thought there was a report pending somewhere.
Yes, there is a report coming. I'm not sure an exact timing of the report, but a consultant has been engaged to look at that question. I believe it will be coming through Marco's shop. I'm not sure an exact timing of it.
Thank you, Mr. Gurton.
Mr. Marco Rumuno?
Through Mr. Chair, yes, that'll come forward in the probably the February or March cycle.
Will you be coming back to present it?
So in all seriousness, who is going to be in charge of that? Who's going to be in charge of that report from the consultant?
Mr. Rumuno?
Mr. Chair, ANC has been working with the treasurer on that, so it's
okay.
They're prepared to bring that back.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no further questions or comments, put the staff recommendation to the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That carries, Mr. Clerk, and that brings us to R7. Would someone like to move that, please? Councillor Gardner, Councillor Thompson. Questions or comments? Councillor Gallo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On page 4, at the that last paragraph, it states the town's 2018 budget for our share of property tax adjustment, such as 357, 358 assessment review, board decisions, and Municipal Property Assessment Corporation's minutes of settlement is $200,000. With several significant assessment review board decisions previously posted, the budget for 2018 will be extended, but is beyond the control of staff or council. The budget for 2019 is being reevaluated. Can someone just enlighten me on what that means in in a different language?
Mr. Gardner, can you answer that?
Essentially, through you, Mr. Chair, essentially what that we budgeted approximately $200,000 in 2018 related to the adjustment of taxes as a result of the MPAC assessments being adjusted when people put forth an appeal of some sort. They don't like how they've been assessed. Sometimes those findings go not in our favor, and we have to adjust the expected tax revenues as a result. This amount captures that type of tax assessment adjustment. We're expecting, we had a couple big appeals, so received some decisions on those appeals, and a few of them went against, not in our favor for a few non-residential appeals. And we're expecting to be writing off more taxes than initially anticipated, so we're going to exceed the $200,000 this year. That's what that's alluding to here. And we're then looking at the 2019 figure, whether 200,000 is an appropriate figure to continue there or not. There's a couple big ones still in the mix, such as the Canadian Tire appeal that may go against, or not go in our favor rather, so we're going to plan for that.
So we try, through you, Mr. Chair, we try to estimate on a yearly basis where that lies, and that $200,000 figure is the amount that we try to guess at to see where we end up at the end of the year.
It's essentially staff's best guess at what's going to come to fruition in a given year.
And we've reached that threshold?
As of today, through you, Mr. Chair, as of today, we have reached the $200,000 threshold, and we expect to come in closer to about $300,000 by year end.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no further questions, I'll call out Councillor Thompson.
Through you to Jason Gardner. So, Jason, that begs the question. In the attachments, you list, $50,000 essentially. Why not list all of the ones that make up that $300,000 figure or $200,000 figure you're reciting?
Well, the important thing to note here is the section 357 and sorry, what are the two? The
357 and 358.
357, 358 are just a component of that total 300,000. As you can tell, they're a relatively small component of that amount. So the focus of this report is just on the 357, 358 write-offs. So it doesn't relate to the biggest ones that we just talked about.
So will there be another report or more information to give council more details on those figures about how they're comprised?
My understanding is those write-offs, I believe, don't have to come through council for its approval. So that's why you don't see those. But 357, 358 definitely do as per the Municipal Act.
I think Mr. CAO has something to add here.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the other write-offs are a function of MPAC changing the assessment. Sure. So we have no choice but to adjust the tax roll to reflect MPAC's assessment. So those are automatic, whereas these are write-offs that council has some authority to approve or not approve, but they're outside of the assessment changing.
And I'm not challenging the figure. I guess I want to understand the figure, right? So, for example, if the assessment went our way on a particular commercial property and it cost the town $50,000 as a result of it, I would be curious to know what property. I'd like to understand those details. And so I get it that council doesn't have to approve it, but I'm curious to know whether or not that's information that can be provided to council just for our knowledge. Is it simple enough to, even as through email, to send to all members of council and say, here's the makeup of that $200,000 or $300,000, and these are the properties? I don't know if all members of council are interested or not, but I am.
I think we could do that.
Thank you.
Great. If there are no further questions, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries, Mr. Clark. Break. Okay. 10 minutes. Okay, we'll take a 10-minute break. All those in favor of... Okay. Off you go for 10 minutes. Okay, if everyone can get back to their seats, please. Okay, so we have one more on the regular agenda, R8. Can someone move that, please? Councillor Gardner, and second, Councillor Humphreys. Questions, comments? Councillor Gardner.
I'd like to know what work they would be doing in the next 3 months. I'd also like to know where they're at this point with the work for the agreement.
Ms. McDougall?
I mean, and it may not be possible tonight, but before I make a decision next week.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and certainly even before next week, I can circulate to Council in more detail what Sport Aurora has provided to us as it relates to their Year 3, which is all of 2018's status report, as well as what they at the moment have been proposing to look at for 2019, but as a whole calendar year. So I can submit both of those to Council between now and next week. But as a high level, the status, there's been a lot of work done by Sport Aurora and the local committees, our community as well. The part of 2018, or Year 3 of the sport plan, consisted of various tasks that were outlined in the sport plan, from sport leadership, including performance measures, sport council, which is the evaluation of the type of governance model, from financial sustainability work, relating to development of a business development committee, such things as formulating a fundraising event, which they've proceeded with working on, development of volunteer development, volunteer working with the local sports organizations, and they've connected themselves with the Neighborhood Network in order to help facilitate the development of volunteer recruitment. Also through physical literacy, which hits a number of components within the sport plan. They've done a significant amount of work as it relates to after-school multi-sport work with the community as well as with the town. They've achieved a grant application, Swim to Survive grant application with the 2 school boards. They also are, through physical literacy, working with the town as it relates to tracking daily activity training, physical literacy one-on-one training with all of the municipal town staff, as well as other agencies and organizations for training. Cultural diversity, they've done some preliminary work confirming that the town has received and has staff support working with them on a cultural diversity component. They do have to provide a supplementary report to the staff on that element, and there's a few similar to that, but they have done some work as it relates to cultural diversity, working with women in sport as well, the advocacy groups there, and with that they are working with the Harmony Movement, and their proposal coming forward, they have some recommendations out through the work that they've done this year, recommendations that they would like to see implemented for 2019 that relate to the sport plan and continuing on with that objective. Persons with disabilities, they have worked with the town staff, Matt Zawada, Accessibility Advisor, as well as our Recreation Department, and implementing and looking at some of the policies as it relates to access to sport, and also becoming a member of Parasport to try to implement and organize some of the relationships and expand that relationship as it relates to persons with disability and integrating them into more involvement in sport. Women and girls, they've done some work as it relates to the evolution of, and actually pulled together a committee with a number of local organizations as well as the town staff sitting at the table looking at women in sport and trying to figure out a way of helping to expand that relationship and moving that forward. And then also low income, they have their All Kids Can Play program. They've re-implemented some of the policies around that in their own element that they have. Older adults, part of the activity as it relates to sport access with older adults, they have through the pilot project of community home assistance for seniors is under review. The All Abilities course or Abilities course, some of you may have heard or seen at our own senior center in partnership with Chartwell. They have built an Abilities course which will help evolve the local seniors, elder adults with their training as it relates to trying their and helping with their ability to improve or help prevent falls, their stability, working on their physical capabilities. And from a sport promotion, they've developed a sport concierge program working with the local sports organizations. So when there's a tournament coming to town, they help facilitate their connection and communication with the various businesses in the community, trying to help communicate and promote what they can achieve. I'm trying to skim the items, but I can say that of the projects from what is proposed for 2018, if I crunch out what is complete versus what is going to need to roll over into 2019, just simply because the project is an ongoing component, versus what is pending. I only have some pending that are pending a final report due to me in December, so they're due to submit a number of those. At this point, taking into account what's pending, assuming that's coming forward, the pending and they're complete, they only are pretending of the 2018 carrying over about 12% of the items. So they've completed a significant amount of what's in 2018. And the carryover, again, are those continuation of projects for 2018. And that, oh, sorry. Go ahead. I can tell you want to speak. Go ahead.
It's very impressive that you have all this information at your fingertips. So the 12% is rollovers, or is the 12% things that are still outstanding for 2018?
These are rollovers.
So is outstanding things for 2018 that are not rollovers?
The only outstanding things would be a final report due to myself as the director, part of the agreement. They're obligated to provide a final report on those components, which is a status update ultimately. Some of that may be communicating that some of those projects' status update is that we would like to continue and we want to progress that into 2019.
Thank you. And so if Sport Aurora didn't receive more funding, it seems from what you said, we're mostly looking at rollovers from things that have started that would be continued.
At this point, the rollovers would be completing or continuing to work on the year 3 objectives of the sport plan. But there is year 4 objectives of the sport plan. And so the year 4, in addition to the rollovers, there are year 4 objectives that they are outlined in the sport plan that would need to continue or initiate. And they've got an outline of how that might look for 2019. So some of those projects are new initiatives, and some might be a continuation of the year 3 objectives. The sport plan is it's a living document. It's not cut and dry. This is done, it's done, and put it aside. There's often a development of either a policy or a project or an initiative that you'd like to see continue. And so that would be an evolution of an idea that started in year 1, but they're wanting to continue to moving it forward.
Thank you. And are the initiatives, are there KPIs with them? Is there a success rate? Do they comment on success or problems or what could be done better?
Ms. McDougall?
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. The KPIs are these deliverables. So there isn't a number or a stat. They do represent and demonstrate and communicate participation in programs, but there isn't, that KPI objective hasn't been identified for them to meet. The objective is more about initiating a committee or initiating an event, an activity that meets the action of the sport plan.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, you can initiate something and it may not be successful. So I'm wondering just how well they're doing with all of these things, because it sounds like a massive amount of work. Thanks.
Mayor Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Ms. McDougall. Ms. McDougall, I'm just wondering for next week, could we get a number, or at least a separation of how much is the Sport Aurora funding compared to the implementation of the sport plan out of that $25,850?
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's something I can go back to Sport Aurora about and try to identify how much of this ask is worth the sport plan versus their traditional projects that they typically use. I can get that.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. And I think that would be useful information for council sitting around the table next week. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through you to Ms. McDougall. Mr. McDougall, one of the new things we did in 2018 was the funding agreement. Within that agreement, there were a number of deliverables. I think there were some other commitments and asks as laid out in the agreement. Have they, to your knowledge, fulfilled them all? Or where do we stand with those items that were put into the agreement?
Ms. McDougall?
Through Mr. Chair, for me, similar to just communicating now, the deliverables, again, are not cut and dry year-end completion date. And some of them they are, but majority of them are initiatives that want to roll over and keep moving. The success of them, you want to keep moving. But specifically, just trying to itemize based on their year status report, and I've gone through the number of steps. Again, I'm suggesting there's approximately, cut and dry, 78% is complete. Either they initiated a committee and the committees were operating. That kind of a completion I call complete, although technically the committee keeps going. Of that, in addition, there's about 10 items pending, and that pending is simply a report to me. That's an action they have to complete, which was due to me in December. And the other is the remaining 12% approximately is a carryover. So as far as them meeting their objectives, I believe they're on track. It's just with there is some that requires carryover.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I also believe that, through the conversation that happened previously, there was also some desire to see some reporting standards, different things that we've asked of other organizations that we've asked implemented into the agreement as well. Have they been adhering to those requests when it comes to reporting and structure and all that kind of stuff that's within the agreement?
Ms. McDougall?
Here, Mr. Chair. Yes, so I meet quarterly with the Executive Director, and in addition to that, they have supplied me with the status reports as they're required in the agreement.
So the engagement between yourself and Sport Aurora has been good so far?
Has met the objectives that are outlined in the agreement.
Thank you.
Councillor Gallo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, in terms of the additional funding, and I apologize if I'm not completely up to speed on this or the agreement, is that amount part of a 2018 budget, or is this request, I guess, being asked prior to our deliberation for next year's budget?
Ms. McDougall?
Through Mr. Chair, this is an ask in light of the fact we have not approved 2019's budget or deliberated. So it is a ask for a pre-approval of funding to help them start as of January 1 with operations.
So it's non-approved in terms of our budget process. This is in anticipation of us agreeing to spending these funds to continue the plan during our 2019 deliberations. I'm feeling a little uncomfortable at that. I don't know if, and again, I would concede to some colleagues that are much more familiar with this, but at first blush, that to me doesn't make a lot of sense, because I understand why it's happening. It's election year, and normally we would have had this completed by this time, and we're speculating that we would have approve these funds. I don't like to operate that way, and from what I've heard, it's not necessarily an essential service. So my at first blush, my gut is to push pause. My preference is to have this as part of the budget process. I'm not clear in terms of if we do that, what effect to the community there would be. And I would ask that of you, and I'm not sure if you'd be able to answer that, but maybe you can give it a try through you. If we were not to fund this, what impact to the community would it have?
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Mr. Chair, at this point, the effect would be a delay in meeting the objectives in the sport plan. So if an initiative was to take place in the spring, if there was a delay and no funding, they didn't operate it, then that spring initiative would not take place. So the sport plan's proposals for, say, let's say, women in sport, to look to initiatives to take place in 2019. If there was no continuation of the discussions and the preparation or plans for that initiative would stop, would pause until council provides additional dollars or funding or direction with moving the sport plan forward.
So through you to Ms. McDougall or other council, what was the term of this agreement? Is it the end of December 2013 and we expected everything to be completed by then? And if that is the case, we're being asked to continue that because the work wasn't done during the time frame that was allocated. Is that a good sense of what's happening?
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the funding agreement is for it's a one-year funding. It's an annual funding. So as council approves the annual funding envelope, the agreement could be renewed. Without funding, the agreement ceases. So it's up to council to decide on an annual basis if the funding is to continue. As far as the, I forget the word you used, but the sport plan outlined 5 years of initiatives. We're on year 3. We're just wrapping up year 3, which is the 2018. So again, there are initiatives still to happen based on the sport plan, and the sport plan, keeping in mind historically, was developed by and Sport Aurora supported that, as well as the community input to develop what those initiatives should be and how Aurora should focus on sport and what initiatives are priorities here in Aurora. It would simply mean, not simply, but it would mean a pause, a stop until council makes some direction as to what our next step would be and how to continue with the sport plan implementation.
So thank you. In terms of reporting so that we, council, can judge how we're doing, what's the experience on council in terms of some type of listen, I'm used to the cultural center and we go through hoops. We went through hoops. They go through hoops now to provide detail in terms of what's being spent. And I'm curious to see what reporting was done to council in terms of, what was your thought process last year to continue it to this year? It would help me make that decision because I haven't seen anything and there are no reports that are linked to how successful this was on the agenda. So I'll leave it up to council or maybe staff knows in terms of what the reporting. Maybe the reporting is only to staff and council wasn't privy to it. I don't know because I don't have any of that.
Ms. McDougall?
Through Mr. Chair, I think I understand what you're asking. And again, I wasn't here at the time of presentation for budget. So, but from what I understand and talking with my own colleagues here, that Sport Aurora had prepared a proposal, which included to offset a sustainability budget, request to sustain their current operations. In addition to that, there was an ask for continuation or implementation of the sport plan. At that time, based on the request in 2018, it was approximately $163,000 in total to do the sustainability piece plus the sport plan. As a whole, council chose to approve $103,400, with the expectation they would still deliver the sport plan within their envelope. So there was a decision, and again, I wasn't part of the discussion, so I don't know how the table conversation went, but decision was that based on the funding provided and the objectives that Sport Aurora deliver, as well as what are the objectives that are in the sport plan, that could be done for a support of 103. And so far, based on that information, this year, Sport Aurora has met that objective.
And through you, was there any obligation to report anything to council in terms of their achievements?
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Mr. Chair, based on the agreement, the responsibility was for them to report to the director.
Okay. Thank you.
Mayor Marakis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Ms. McDougall. Ms. McDougall, is it possible for next week that for our newer colleagues that weren't sitting here at the table, that we could actually have those reports and that from the budget made available to them so that they could look through it and get a better feel for what occurred? And I would even go a little bit further, and maybe if they can get the reports from when we started funding for the implementation of the sport plan, so they can have a fulsome understanding of what's happened and occurred, and then next week we can have a full discussion on this and come to a conclusion.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Councillor Thompson.
I think just to add that perhaps it would also be helpful for the members of council to actually see the sport funding agreement. There are some information there. I also believe that as part of that agreement, similar to what we asked of the Cultural Center, is that, the reports, the budgets, all of that information was to be posted on their website as well, and that was within the agreement. We kind of looked to the Cultural Center agreement as a template, I believe. Mr. Nadarozny or Ms. Desario can speak to that more. They were the ones instrumental in drafting it up. But, we wanted to have the same standards for all the organizations we deal with. And so I think it's fair to say that was kind of a template used. Would that be correct, Mr. Nadarozny?
Mr. Nadarozny?
To you, Mr. Chair, some of the elements in there are similar, but it didn't have the same rigor of reporting that Councillor Gallo referred to in terms of the agreement that was with the Cultural Center.
Ms. McDougall, regarding the items or the deliverables that are multiple years in duration, usually projects or items of that length usually have kind of roadmap, and you have those markers. Those carryover items, do you see the report in terms of it's like a live document or presentation where it's moving forward until December and it just keeps on moving? Have you seen the work of those longer initiatives?
To you, Mr. Chair, it's not as definitive as like a Gantt chart where there's progress that can slide or move or be part of a project management model like that. But the wording, the information that's provided in the sport plan as it relates to their status reports, and the original sport plan objectives that show what year those items should have initiated, maybe completed or progressed through. There are, it's very specific. There's check boxes in each of those years that those things were to be initiated. And that's what's being included in their proposal and what has been done for 18 and then proposed for 19. So there is I'll call it a bit of a map, but it's not as linear or as clearly defined as something like a Gantt chart.
In addition to what Mayor Marakis asked for before next week's council meeting, can you forward us the what did you call it, the
deliverables
or the proposal for 2018, so we can have a look at that as well? Okay. Yeah, essentially the plan itself.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and there's a lot of conversation this evening. We're trying to understand exactly, where we are in the roadmap of the 5-year deliverables. There's 22 recommendations, and just understanding the status of all those. And I know they're doing a great job. I'm not worried about that, but it sounds like we need additional information so we can make a good decision moving forward. And I wondered if, just like we did earlier, can we just receive this tonight and then come back with the additional information so we can make a good, decision moving forward next week? I just like to propose that because I don't want to see this fail, because it looks like there's a lot of people kind of figuring out what to do. So if we could just receive it tonight and have the rest of the details that we need, including the progressive chart, what the plan is, what they've done to date and what their plan is over the next 3 months, and then of course getting ready for the budget season. I think that would be really helpful, and then we can move forward on next meeting. I don't know if everyone is okay with that, but I was wondering if we can do that tonight. Is everybody okay to receive tonight and then further
Mr. Clerk,
information next week?
I think you have something to say.
Absolutely. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I think we could vote separately on the motions tonight, which would have the same effect, or a friendly amendment to remove Clause 2.
Sure.
Or defeating the motion would do the same. You would see it showed up as just to receive, and wouldn't be anything stopping council from restoring the staff recommendation next week.
Okay. Whatever you want to do.
If I could suggest, I think voting separately on the clauses would be.
Okay.
I think a friendly amendment is better. I don't want to see this fail and not be talked. Let's just receive it tonight, my opinion.
Councilor Gardner?
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to just have the receipt for this evening. I don't want to do anything else tonight. Thank you. So, they won't think it's friendly.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, if there's no comments, we're just going to be voting on staff recommendation number 1 to receive. All those in favor? Opposed? That passes, Mr. Clerk. So we go on to new business. Let's go start from instead of going from the outer side, we'll just go to my left to Councilor Gardner, and we'll just work our way around.
I just would like to know what's happening, a timeline for all of the environmental motions I put forward. Perhaps to you, Mr. CEO, would that be in the first or second quarter of this year, perhaps?
Mr. Nadarasny?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we have a bit of a staffing shortage there right now, but we will endeavor to get you a timeline nonetheless in the first quarter for sure.
Thank you. That would be great. I just want to make sure they don't fall off, any of them fall off the table. Thanks.
Councilor Thompson? Councilor Gallo?
Just wanted to congratulate everyone for our first successful meeting, and look forward to many more.
Councilor Gilliland?
Wondering if there was a way we could, through you, Mr. Chair, staff, to find out how Bill C-66 would affect Aurora, based on the delegate Susan Walmer. If we could get a report on the effect of how that would be in Aurora.
Would you like some kind of response now, or just for...
If something could be prepared and presented to us so we can understand what that would mean.
Mr. Nadarasny?
See, Mr. Chair, our intention was to bring something to Council in January. The House won't sit till February, so this won't be dealt with by the province till at least mid-February. So we figured with all that's going on between now and the end of the year, we'd do something at the January to give you an update.
Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This evening we had a delegation for the RARA Ratepayers Group, which, by the way, my grandson calls me Rara, so I'll never forget it. But anyway, to that effect, are we going to be able to, are we getting a report? Are we truly getting a report by the middle of the month, like next week? And just wondering status on that and the engagement process for the ratepayers and with the consultant. I thought we were going to have some of that happening as well, but it's been a long time.
Mr. Rumuno?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair. As per Council's direction back in September, we've retained a consultant. They're reviewing all the various reports that have been done, the public reports. They have all the information in front of them, and they are scheduled to report back to Council at the January 30th public planning meeting. And the report will be, I haven't seen a report yet, but it'll be ready and made public as per our procedural bylaw a week before the meeting.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Mayor Marcus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, there's been quite a lot of talk and chatter about Bill 66. So I just wanted to say that I'm actually going to join my colleagues from Hamilton and Burlington and say that I'm absolutely opposed to the new open for business legislation. I think that this town, when we look at development within our community, I've always said, but when many applications come before us, it's about having appropriate development, smart growth, and I think that this bill speaks to the opposite. I think that allowing for bypassing of many of the acts, including the Clean Water Act, the Greenbelt Act, is something that I think that Aurora residents and myself are not interested in. So while we appreciate the work by Premier Ford and the province, I say from my point of view, and I hopefully from Aurora, no thank you. And so next week I will be bringing a motion forward, and I will be asking for my council colleagues to waive procedure to allow it to come to the floor so we can oppose this bill and ask the province to not go forward with this bill. So hopefully next week council will indulge my motion and we can speak to it. So that's all I have for right now.
Mayor Marakis didn't wait one cycle for a motion. That's great. Speaking of bills, through you, it's through me, Mr. Nadarasny, do you know what's going on with the OMB reform, and the municipal tribunals? Has anything come across your table from the province in terms of what that might look like?
To you, Mr. Chair. Nothing formal. There's lots of rumors about that Mr. Ford has some changes in mind. I've heard everything from going back to the old system to some fine-tuning of the current new system. I do know that there's a couple of issues that have gone before the new panel and are being challenged, so there's a number of things that are being sorted out procedurally. So I think certainly on some more difficult cases, I know some of them are tied up in court and waiting for some jurisdictional rulings. So the actual work of the existing group is even not progressing as quickly as it is intended to with the new legislation. So I think we're really in a wait and see pattern to see what Mr. Ford wants to do next with it. But it's going slow. I can summarize that way.
Councillor Gardner, you wanted to say something?
Mr. Chair, following on the previous comment, will the residents in the stable neighborhoods, will the ratepayers associations be able to see the draft that the consultant puts forward and be able to make comments on that? How can that be accomplished?
Mr. Rumuno?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Again, it's a public planning meeting, so the report will be made available when it's prepared in advance of the meeting. It'll be a formal public planning meeting. They will have an advance opportunity to see the report and to make their comments in advance or at that meeting, because it'll be one of our standard public planning meetings. So they will have plenty of opportunity to make their comments. If if they have additional comments in advance that they want to provide to the consultant, they can do so, and we'll ensure they get forwarded on to the consultant.
Follow up through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Muno. Mr. Muno, when the information was sent in to the consultants, were all of the delegations and there were many meetings, were all of the comments sent in to the consultants so they could form the draft report?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, they were.
Thank you.
Mayor Marcus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make a quick comment about what was brought up in regards to the OMB. I do hope that the province does not go down that road, because I can say with much certainty that if they do go down that road and try to make some changes and bring back the old ways of the OMB, I can tell you right now that Aurora will be at the forefront, as we were instrumental in getting those changes. We will be back at the forefront, and the province will definitely have a fight on their hands.
Yeah.